Here's the big story we are tracking on India Global. In fresh trouble for Bangladesh's interim chief Mohammed Yunus, the army chief of Bangladesh, that is General Waker-Uz-Zaman, has now warned him to not delay polls any further. And he's even blamed the infighting for deteriorating law and order situation in Bangladesh. He has said at an army memorial event, the army chief warned that the ongoing political slugfest was allowing miscreants to thrive. He said that with some believing they could act with impunity against this chaos that is unfolding in Bangladesh. Zaman's remarks came as differences grow within the student groups that forced former Premier Sheikh Hasina out of office last August. Divergences are now coming to the fore between the caretaker administration and political parties over holding of elections. Nahid Islam, who was one of the key orchestrators of the August 5th protests, is also now set to launch his own political party, one that is set to be backed by Jamaat-e-Islami. Now, what does this mean for Bangladesh in terms of the political uncertainty that lies ahead, the big warning that has come in from the army chief? Let's first listen in to a soundbite coming in. We come back and talk more.
আমরা নিজেরা ভেদাভেদ সৃষ্টি না করি, আমরা নিজেরা ইউনাইটেড থাকি। আমাদের মধ্যে যদি কোনো সমস্যা থেকে থাকে, কোনো ব্যত্যয় থেকে থাকে, কোনো গ্রিভান্সেস থেকে থাকে, সেটা আমরা আলোচনার মাধ্যমে সমাধান করব। এটার জন্য ডানে বায়ে দৌড়িয়ে কোনো লাভ হবে না, নিজের ক্ষতি ছাড়া কোনো লাভ হবে না। আমি আপনাদের এই জিনিসটা নিশ্চিত করে দিচ্ছি।
Okay, that was the army chief and his big warning. Viewers, there are several questions that I'm now posing in terms of what lies ahead in Bangladesh. The first key question, what is really stopping Mohammed Yunus from holding elections? This is an interim government. It came on after the 5th of August uprising, and almost 7 months it will be. There is no update on when those elections will be held. The second big question, is Yunus facing now pressure from his aides to hold elections? Remember, the Bangladesh army chief is a man on his side. He's been rallying support for Yunus. There are members of the BNP who are saying hold elections. So is he now facing pressure from those who are favorable to the Yunus dispensation that elections must be held? And the other key question, is there now a growing wedge between the army chief and Mohammed Yunus? The army chief made it very clear when he said that the anarchy is because of the present dispensation. Where does the buck stop? And who is responsible for this anarchy is the key question. Let's get in Yashab Osama Rahman, who's joining us, who's in fact at the Business Standard, and Manjeev Singh Puri, former ambassador, with me on the broadcast. Ambassador Puri, let me start with you. These are very stern comments that have come in from the Bangladesh army chief, essentially setting the stage for possibly some sort of an update coming in on the elections. Is that how you see it?
Gaurie, thank you very much. You know, I like the way you put all of this. I would say something a little different. You know, when this criticism happens on Mr. Mohammed Yunus and the interim government, then in some senses, the stain of all that also falls on the army chief, because the general belief is that, you know, he is the general behind it all. Now, in a sense, he is kind of distancing himself from all of that. But at the same time, he's also warning the people that, look, it isn't so simple. It was perhaps, in a sense, I would say simple, but you were able to bring about a change in the government. But taking this forward is not such a simple matter, and all of you, you know, get your act together. Look, one of the things I liked in all of this is that there is a pushback against the Jamaat. You know, even from the BNP, there's been a certain pushback against the Jamaat. It's not only the Awami League and its supporters who are pushing back. So all in all, if this results in moving things forward towards a free and fair election, then I think that's something which is a positive development. But we need to wait and watch and see what's happening. And I'm sure somebody who's inside Bangladesh and has a, let me say, a feel on the pulse of what is happening might be able to give us a better judgment.
Mr. Rahman, what's your reading of these comments that have come in from the Bangladesh army chief?
I think when you look at the comments the army chief is making, they're very interesting because you have to take into consideration the law and order situation in Bangladesh. the law and order situation in Bangladesh has been on a steady decline. It has been not on an improved stage, right? One of the key reasons behind this is obviously because after the fall of the Hasina-led regime, a lot of police officers had cases filed against them. We had questions being raised about the DGFI, the NSI, our intelligence wings as well, right? So the army also, in yesterday's speech, in fact, he mentions these things, and he says that this is something that does upset people when it comes to conducting their duties. It is a barrier for them to conducting their duties. If you look at the rate, I have the rates with me right now. If I could talk about thievery, burglary, murder, robbery, kidnapping, we have seen a spike in most of these rates, right? So I think mainly he's saying people should be united.
I get what you're saying, and it's very important. But the fact
Right.
is, and this is a question I put forth to both of you, which is that the army is not in the barracks. Bangladesh Army Chief has been at the forefront of all that is happening right now in Bangladesh. They've got sweeping powers just days after the revolt, unprecedented sweeping powers, and they continue to hold so. It's going to be 7 months since the revolt happened, and the fact that nobody's been able to bring the situation anywhere close to normalcy doesn't speak highly about the army itself.
I think, if I may interrupt, I mean, we are talking about an uprising which deposed someone who was in power for 15 years. So 15 years of corruption, you're not going to solve it in 7 months' time. And I think given the
Are you saying that it will be
we have,
15 years of mayhem that Bangladesh is going to see?
Of course not. Of course Bangladesh is not going to see. We have never seen 15 years of mayhem, right? But there are
No, you
periods
only
of time
said-
when there is a lot of uncertainty. And I think to say that, oh, we need to get rid of all the criminals. Do you know, even till, I think yesterday, we had 1,638 arrests made, just yesterday. Do you realize 999 of these arrests came because of previous cases? These were people who were running scot-free for 15 years. Now they're all being brought to the book. Do you think they're not going to react to these situations?
Okay.
It's not a magic wand that I can wave and solve everything, no?
No, okay, the fact that the army has unprecedented powers and it has still been 7 months and Bangladesh is nowhere close to normalcy doesn't speak highly about the army. But I take what you're saying, and let me then get in Ambassador Puri on this as well. Ambassador Puri, what about the tone and the tonality of what the army chief was saying? Of course, he was speaking at an army event, so he had to, of course, put forth a certain imagery, and optics also matter there. But how do you read the tone and tenor in which he spoke, A, about the fact that the law and order situation has completely collapsed, and B, that elections ought to happen?
So, Gaurie, first, I must agree with you what you just said. Look, you know, armies worldwide have done this kind of stuff, and I don't blame the current chief because this was a situation caused as a result of something else. They promise good governance, and they like people to believe that they are squeaky clean, excellent, efficient, and really giving good governance to people. So when things happen, like our colleague, my colleague on the panel has just said, there is a spike in all kinds of, criminal activities, etc. Whatever may be the reason, if you are the force in power, then the stain comes on you. And in a sense, in my understanding, he is trying to distance himself and say, look, guys, take some steps, putting a little bit of the pressure or a lot of the pressure on the government, which is led by Mr. Mohammed Yunus, no matter
Is it
what
working?
we know.
Is this
Yes.
pressure going to work, Ambassador Puri?
Look, let's wait and see. One of the things we must remember is that the army is perhaps the backbone behind it all. So when they say all of this, at least to some extent, efforts to try and ameliorate the things at a political level might be taken up. But as I mentioned to you, look, let's be a little clear that it isn't just the Jamaat which is leading the stuff or the BNP with them, but you are seeing a certain amount of pushback against the Jamaat. And that's something also which is worth seeing. So, we have to wait and watch. What does this mean? What exactly is the thing? But the fact that he's saying is that he also realizes that his important force, which he's heading, people perhaps are not particularly illusioned anymore. And after so many months, a degree of disillusionment with that is setting in, which he has to try and set right.
Okay, Mr. Rahman, comment on the fact that is there now disillusionment that is coming in amongst the student groups, amongst those who felt that, change is on the horizon, but it doesn't look so. almost 7 months down the line?
Right. So one of the biggest reasons, one of the biggest sources of disillusionment has always been that the students, they gave their lives for this movement, right? And one of the things that they really want is for justice to be ensured. And for justice to be ensured, I think one of their demands is that Sheikh Hasina should be brought to trial. Now, we're both aware that Sheikh Hasina is right now stationed in India, where she is being afforded all kinds of protection. So one of the key reasons for the disillusionment is that she has not been extradited, or the process there has reached a sort of stalemate. But at the same time, I must agree with you on certain points that there is a time frame. Even if I say that 7 months is not enough, there are rising calls for elections to be held as soon as possible. And in fact, Mohammed Yunus himself said a couple of weeks ago that he's looking for election by the end of December. This was something that the army chief also said yesterday, that we are looking for elections by December. And I think a lot of people in this country really want to exercise our franchise. We have not been properly able to in the past 15 years. So this is a good time for us to go out there, give our votes, and I think we're all looking forward to that.
Do you think there will be free and fair elections in Bangladesh, Mr. Rahman?
I mean, absolutely, there should be free and fair elections in Bangladesh. I feel like if you look at our election commission, the way it's set up right now, if you look at the reforms that are being discussed, one of the things you asked was, why is it taking so long? Because reforms still need to be done. And if I leave things as they were, then we may see a repeat of the situation that has been plaguing us for the past decade or so. And yes, right now I believe that there is every scope for a free and fair election in Bangladesh. But things change in an overnight.
Things really do, and I hope they change for the better. Finally, let me ask you this, Mr. Rahman, as we wrap this up very quickly. Ambassador Puri spoke about the fact that there is resentment in Bangladesh against mainstreaming radical Islamist elements, Jamaat-e-Islami being one. Is that an opinion you share?
Is there resentment? I mean, any kind of radicalism, I would be extremely, I find it distasteful, and I would be completely against any form of radicalism, be that a religious one or be that a political one. And I think that is a sentiment that is shared by the people of this country. We do not want radicalism in our borders. You can talk to some of our top leaders, you can talk to some top officials or politicians. They'll all say the same thing. Nobody wants radicalism, in their own homes. I mean, how would that
Okay, this is not about individuals, but it is about countries and how they move forward. But thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global on an issue that I'm going to keep coming back to. But viewers, today, the bottom line on what's happening in Bangladesh is, well, Mohammed Yunus's government is now going to complete almost 7 months in power. An interim government being there for 7 months is long enough for it to actually have a roadmap for elections. But what happens when you come to power without a roadmap? What happens when you try and mainstream elements which are essentially fringe? What happens when you have the army not inside the barracks but on the streets? Well, unfortunately, viewers, what you have is Bangladesh, a situation that needs to now urgently come back to normalcy. And lastly, the army chief's comments about saying that the anarchy is because of everyone is him now completely washing his hands off the madness that has really unfolded in Bangladesh in the last couple of months. Minorities continue to be on attack, arrests continue to be made, and political targeting hasn't stopped as yet.